Then please articulate very well. Have a seat. Forward and right. Down, relax.
Matriculating can sit behind. So all the matriculated students come in front. Take this front seat. All the matriculated students take the front seat, please. Sorry?
I said this road is meant for them, so that others can see.
Way. Then please, then take this road now. So the others will sit that way. Take this road.
student who is supposed to lead us with a short song, and then we call on Reverend Father Anthony to pray for us. Please.
Of the Matriculation. We thank you for this institute and for the founders. Bless them and bless your students and their lecturers. Give them the wisdom to continue this good work which you have started with them. Bless this day and make it continue to be fruitful through Christ our Lord. Amen. Amen.
Thank you so much. You know, this is an institution where we start with prayers and end with prayers. Okay, we are going to proceed immediately with the singing of the national anthem and the Holy Anthem. Then I will continue with the rest of the program as it is here. Thank you. Thank you so much. We can all sit. Okay. I want to continue with the reading of the rest of the program of the day. And before I do that, I want to introduce myself. I am Tobiatu Daniel. I am an instructor and also doubles as the president of Cameroon Association of Critical Care Nurses and as pioneer secretary of African Federation of Critical Care, and also a member of the Global Services Alliance and an education committee member of the World Federation of Pediatric Intensive and Critical Care Societies, and also a representative at the research board of World Federation of Critical Care Nurses. Thank you so much. I want to continue reading the program as we ended at the level of singing of the national anthem and the Holy Infant anthems. We are going to continue with the welcome address by the proprietor, and then followed by activities which will be done by the students. There are quite a series of activities that the students are going to carry out. And then we have the presentation of academic discourse, which is going to be done to us by our guest speaker, Reverend Statambui. And then we are going to get taking of the matriculation book, which is going to be done for us by the registrar of the school. And then we are going to have activities by students again. And then we have also on your own program, you may not see this, but then we are going to have installation of the student government by Mr. Thema. And then we are going to have a speech from this government. Then we have closing remarks, which the person is due to come. And then we have photographs, refreshment, and departure. I don't know if we approve of this program. This is the tentative program for now, unless there is something that we think that is very necessary. If not, we are going to move on with the speech from the proprietor. But before we do that, personally, I think there are some great personalities here that I cannot be able to introduce them myself, and I will go out of the protocol. I am that MC that is always out of line. So I would like to give particularly to the high table to introduce themselves, then before we go to the speech from the proprietor. I will start from.
Thank you, MC. I'm called Susan, and I'm the program coordinator of this humble institution. Thank you.
I'm called Madam Tiborita. I am the admission officer for Breakfast. I'm Helen Maria Wasson. I'm one of the founders of this institution. Thank you.
I am Awasu Sur Simon, proprietor of the school.
I am Tatambui. I'm in charge of communications at the National Episcopal Conference.
I am Emeritus Professor Rose Ghana from Badlenken. I'm a researcher scientist.
Jim Anthony, priest of the Archdiocese of Bedford.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Dr. Grace Tazo, I'm one of the lecturers of this institution. My mother institution is the School of Health Sciences of the Kano University of Central Africa. I am honored to be here today. Thank you.
Morning, I'm Ms. Marindo Mzele. I'm in charge of discipline and clinical direction.
Good morning. I am Milia Antoinette. I am Victor.
My name is Eli Petavo, head of Department of Nursing and Midwifery.
I'm Peter Temangwanyaba, head of Department of Medical Laboratory Services.
I'm Bon Collins. I'm a lecturer from the Congo institution.
I am Jonathan. I'm a nurse midwife, educationist and staff of the school.
I'm Ka Patricia, lecturer in the institution.
I am called Rosalind, a biochemist and a medical lab scientist, and the staff of the institution.
Sorry, I have to stop it now. You know, this is, if I have to continue, hey, give to the assistant manager to say something.
Okay, I've already been introduced. Want the assistant? Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. I think this exercise was very necessary because people like Professor A have heard maybe over the radio or read in a book. You know, I'm a very young man and professors emeritus. we can only have opportunities like this to see them physically. This is very great. And I also want to very much thank Dr. Wasum for making it for this event again. And Reverend Father Tatamwi, when the time comes, we will know exactly who he is and the details of what he is going to tell us. Now, we want to go to the proprietor to tell us if we are actually welcome to this event of matriculation and induction. Thank you so much.
Yeah, Reverend Father. You can see folks are there. So we have to there. And members, staff, both academic and administrative staff of the school. I want to welcome, on behalf of my wife and myself, I want to welcome you to this the third matriculation ceremony of our students. I want to thank your grandfather, Humphrey Tatamui, for accepting to come here and give us a keynote. I felt very guilty to take him to task asking this because I knew what he went through. He's going through a lot of stress for the past 1 month. He just came back from Seoul, and I somehow did not told me I should approach him. And in short notice, he accepted to come. So I would like us to give him a hand. Professor Emeritus Bruce Leke, he just arrived from the United States of America just a few days ago. Tired, with jet lag, everything put together. He's still able to come and great occasion for us. This is what I have. And then our son, Reverend Father Anthony G, he just arrived from Veteran this morning, after 5 a.m. this morning, just to make sure that he's present to grace the occasion. He's the priest of the Diocese of Veteran. Please let's give him a hand. Now, this is a very special day for my wife and myself. And the reason is simple. You know about the Holy Infant School, primary, secondary, high. We've been producing students at A levels. We send in 100 students pass. Sometimes 98 pass, sometimes 97 pass. And we've never gone below that. Students come out with 5 A levels, and everybody wants to go to QS or to go to one of the glorified medical schools all over the country. And you know what? When you go to QS, you find about 10,000 students, and they're going to take just about 200. Now, what happens to them? Some of them are forced to go to university and do biology, physics, chemistry, and the rest of it, yes? And when they graduate, they have no jobs. So my wife and myself said, why don't we spend all our lives in education and health. Why don't we create an institution like this? In other words, those who want to go and be medical doctors, let us put it this way, that people want to go to the moon. But now, if you cannot go to the moon, try to be one of the stars. So, in other words, if you can't go to medical school, you can also get involved with the allied health services. So we decided to have this experiment. We are in our third year, and we have about 100 students. It's very challenging, it's been very difficult, but one of the greatest things is that we are in our own building. This building belongs to us. We are not renting it from anybody. There's no landlord who will come tomorrow and say, no, you go. So we want to thank God for his message, we thank God for his blessings, we thank God for his love. Now, we are, the dream is, I'm a dreamer. And this is what has kept me on. I retired from the civil service 40 years ago. But I'm retired, but I'm not tired. And this is why you see me on my feet still talking. And I'm still able to, at least I can know my name. I recognize you and recognize my wife, because some people at my age don't even recognize anybody. So I want to thank God for that. But my dream is, I have a dream, and that dream is that in the next few years, we will have the number of students will increase and multiply. And this building will be small to accommodate them. And as of now, we have already acquired land to make sure that we're going to have a permanent campus. Because you can see that there's going to be an explosion. And the explosion is because whatever my wife and myself we do, we want to do it to the best. And the credit does not go to us, the credit goes to the Holy Infant Jesus. Holy Infant Jesus is the epicenter of whatever we have been doing. We started the primary school with 9 children. Now we've grown and grown. We have over 3,000 children in the Holy Infant School complex. Is that not a blessing? Yes. This does give God a hand. So what I am saying is this. My wife and myself, we have spent our whole lives in the health profession. Ministry of Health. We started in Nigeria, we worked in Nigeria, we started in London, we worked in London, we worked in West Cameroon for 10 years before coming to Yaoundé. I was senior laboratory superintendent in charge of all the laboratories in West Cameroon. I ordered a quick all of them, and then set up blood transfusion services in West Cameroon, and my wife was chief nursing officer for West Cameroon for 10 years. Here in 1972. So we have been here since 1972. And in 1972, she was Chief Nursing Officer or Chief of Service for Training in the Ministry of Health for 10 years before she left to do her PhD. And I was teaching in CUS. I was coordinating the laboratory science aspects in CUS. I was teaching the students there. I trained most of the laboratory technicians who man all our hospitals in this country. And my wife came back to CUS, and she was director of safety in CUS. And then later on joined the WHO. And then we now retired, and we decided to start the Holy Infant School, and it's grown from nursery, primary, secondary, high, and now we have the Higher Institute of Health Science. Let's clap for that. But what I'm telling you is this. We have many schools, mushroom schools like all over the place. I tell you something. Why is it that in Bamenda we have the general hospital, the reference hospital? Why do patients stay in Bamenda and go to Mingo? Why? There's a difference. So what I'm telling you is we have many other schools training people for HMEs and the rest of it. But we will put in everything possible to make sure that we are different. And we are all out. We're going to give you all the didactic criteria. We'll give you the books. After this, you'll see our library, small as it is, we have books. Our lecturers and students have no reason to go anywhere to look for books because the library has been very, very well stocked. And we are out to make sure that by the time you leave this institution, you will be different. Thank you very much.
I think that if you are in my position, we want to continue to listen to them. Also, the story is quite inspiring. I think the story is for you. The story for you is, it may be new, but for me, I can say that I am different and I'm inspired. And this is why I am here. Really, when you listen to them talk, you get inspired. And one thing you must remember to note is that they put God first, not themselves first. And they are very hardworking. You can imagine at his age, he's able to stand up for the length of time that he's able to stand up. The microphone is not working so well, but he is able to talk loudly enough that we can get him at his age. There are so many things that we need to learn from this kind of people. They are doing handing over, and they need people to hand over to. And who are these people that they want to hand over to in the health domain? You are the ones. Those who are matriculating today, this should be an inspiration for you. Hard work starts from studies. Sorry, I'm also an instructor, so I'm almost teaching. Okay, we have to move to the next activities of our program, which is activities by the students. So we'll call on we call on Kathleen and the center to lead that particular aspect. Okay. say that we have many halls here. This is not the only hall we have. What we are discussing here is just the focal hall where we are talking, and it's been projected in the other halls. Okay. You have to give us a song. Okay? it's not something that we are all doubting. Also, I don't need to tell you who they are. Also, they are our angels. The angels that will help us heal the sick people. Is that okay? Really, they are brilliant, they are intelligent, they are angels that can stand by the side of the patient, and the patient will see that healing that is coming from God. You can't imagine. When they were singing, I was wondering, I looked at them and said, hey, no, there may not be one singing, but I see their mouths are moving. Oh, this is serious. Again, can we clap for them? Okay, thank you. We'll be calling on Lydia and Priestley to come and do a special number. Please, you have to be fast. You know I'm critical, no? So when you are not fast, I can just be very critical about your whole program and I cut it off.
Actually, the song is talking about doing the will of God and saying that we are going to go to God's world no matter what and no matter the circumstances. Tant que cela n'est pas, j'irai à nous évangile au bout du monde, j'irai relever ceux qui sont tombés, j'irai redonner
Thank you so much. I think if we have one big opportunity to all of these angels, as you see them all, you discover different talents. And since we do not have much time, we cannot explore all the talents. Really, they are enriching. Very important. They like to sing about God and things like that. Though I think that the real videos about this song that is up, but I think it does something. Now we are going to move to the real issue, a discourse from our guest, and this is Reverend Father Stambu. Here, before he comes up, personally, I attended a retreat that he organized at around the St. Augustine's Junction in Kumbu. I don't remember the year. It was for 3 days, I think. But then, when the retreat was finishing in 3 days, I wished it should have been for 3 weeks or 3 months. Really, he's somebody that if you sit to listen to his messages, you will never want the messages to stop coming. I think this is an opportunity for us today to gain a lot from him and really try to stay in touch. We are going to learn a lot from him. So, Reverend Father Stambu is a Catholic priest from the Archdiocese of Bamenda, ordained by Pope John Paul II. He is an anthropologist, a member of the World Council of Urgent Anthropologists, a member of the Pan-African Association of Anthropologists, and a founding member of the Kabiri Research Center, Bamenda, and a Secretary General of the Nso History Society. And Father Stambu is also a master, has also a master in bioethical science. He has equally trained in sciences of communication, presently works at the National Episcopal Conference of Cameroon in the Commission of Communication. He has published so far about 22 books, which I have with me here, about 3 of the books, and 3 of these books are titled. The first book that I have in my hand, in my left here, is The Faith of Our Ancestors. The second book is The Mission and Role of the Catholic Church Towards Peace Building in a Crisis Situation. The third is The Forms of Traditional Bamenda and Partisan Politics in Contemporary Cameroon. I think that from the titles of these books, you can imagine if you just want to get to find the 22 books and decide to do some research about the wordings in the topics of these books, I think it's going to take you about 1 month. Also, okay, so we're going to give the floor now to Reverend Father Stambu to give us the academic discourse. Thank you so much. Here is the microphone.
The proprietor and proprietress, Dr. Watson and wife, the registrar of the Holy Infant Higher Institute of Health Sciences, Professor Rose Leke. I hate people calling it emeritus. A professor is never emeritus, because once she's a professor, she's there to give and continue to do the research for us, except when she's emeriting into the grave. Dear members of staff in your various academic ranks, dear students, especially those who are matriculating today, I have 2 questions to ask you, or 2 incidents to tell you. One night, a group of bandits came into a house, ruffled the people in the house, and raped one of the girls. It was early about 4 a.m. At 7, they rushed the girl to the hospital, to one of the best doctors around, and she yelled. She discovered the doctor was one of the bandits that raped her. How do you feel about that? Second case. A man is brought in, almost choking, breathing his last. And as they arrive at the hospital, the nurse is discussing with the boyfriend and laughing away. And they try to call her attention. This man needs immediate attention. She keeps on smiling to the nice, beautiful, loving words that the boyfriend is exchanging with her. And when she is finished to attend to the person had just died. And she discovered he was the mother of the boyfriend. In most academic institutions of higher learning, it has become almost customary on the Matriculation Day, in particular, and also on special anniversaries and significant occasions, to have someone deliver an academic discourse. Often, the staff and students and friends of that institution expect a very high-sounding dialogue, usually so full of technical words that in the end, one hardly understands neither the purpose nor the achievement of the academic discourse. An academic discourse is an intellectual conversation which seeks to present, examine, and critically analyze a topic or a theme such that it can educate, promote knowledge, and stimulate critical thinking. It uses the scientific method, and the scientific method, simply put, is knowledge that is orderly acquired and orderly presented. It is a philosophical process which seeks to understand things in their ultimate causes. As the perennial philosophers would say, scientia per ultimas causas, right to the ultimate end of things. The scientific method takes off from an observable fact. Then it seeks the why of that fact and formulates a hypothesis so that it can use it as a modus operandi in order to reach a suggestion for an improvement. This academic discourse has been provoked by the observable fact that the vast majority of Cameroonians do not seem to have either the right to or the access to good health care, except I am not seeing it already. Why? While there may be a multitude of reasons, this paper believes that the root cause may lie in the quality of the formation given to our healthcare providers, hence the justification of our topic, education in values for effective health care. Computer specialists tell us, garbage in, garbage out. We therefore want to attack our output from point of input. Education, by its very nature, seeks to bring up the entire person. Therefore, every education worth its name must be holistic, that is, targeted towards building up the capacities of the individual. 2 years ago, on the 31st of October 2009, Francis spoke to members of the International Federation of Catholic University Students. Among the many reminders that the Pope told them were 3 important things I'd like to share with you. First, that the university and higher institutions of learning should be the places where all intellectual difficulties, scientific and social difficulties find their solution. That all universities are the centers where all social, scientific, and intellectual difficulties find their solutions. Number 1. Number 2, that the higher education should consider what contribution it can make to the integral health of each person and must ask itself about why and the purposes of each discipline. Why this nursing institution? Third, that all higher institutions of learning have the intellectual and moral energy whose responsibilities go beyond the person to be educated and extends to the needs of all humanity. That the Holy Infant Higher Institute of Nursing is not just targeted at educating and forming these 100 or so students, but that it is targeted at, through these students, to the bigger Cameroonian community. Taking a cue from these reminders, our discourse strongly believes that the desire in Cameroon for an effective health care is legitimate, and it can be achieved if we put in all our resources into the proper training of healthcare providers. Every human being has an intellectual capacity and the will to know and execute that which is good and that which is bad. He knows what is valuable. There's no one here who hasn't got an intellect. And if you didn't have an intellect, we'll reduce you to the field of God. There are basic natural and moral values which are inherent in every person. But there are also professional values which are learned in every field of specialization. One of the most delicate fields of specialization, and I'm happy to be with you, has to do with good health care and medical research. Professor Leke here can tell you how many years she has put in researching into malaria issues. One of the most delicate fields of specialization has to do with good health care and medical research. Here, and I want you to hear well, nothing short of excellence is to be tolerated, because in healthcare we are dealing with the dignity and the sacredness of the human person at its most vulnerable moment. And this explains why our concern in this discourse, which fully is education and values for effective healthcare, a critical examination of healthcare training in Cameroon. Our conviction is that if our society is not getting the effective and good healthcare which it deserves, and if we want to change this status quo, we must follow Aristotle's principle of causality. When the cause finishes, the effect ceases. Causa finita, effectus cessa. Therefore, to resolve any problem, any serious problem, it is essential to identify and attack its root causes. This paper believes that in Cameroon, we should critically examine the quality of training given so far to those who will become healthcare providers. And to do this, we shall travel down 4 avenues. First, we want to identify and clarify the key terms of our discourse so that all of us agree about the words which we are using. Second, it is important to consider the concept of education in values, a new concept, a very useful concept, which has become a central concern in holistic education. In fact, a major preoccupation in any education system today, especially when such an education has to do with the formation of healthcare providers. Third, our object of education in values, especially in healthcare training, is to instill, note, ethical and professional instincts in their modus operandi of those concerned, so that we shall not have very enlightened but illy formed or indisciplined nurses, that we shall not have doctors or medical personnel who will also come to rape their patients. We shall therefore indicate the major values which are of necessity, part and parcel, the core elements of the curriculum for healthcare education. This will lead us to make some concrete suggestions towards achieving respect for ethical and professional values in healthcare in Cameroon. Let us begin with a clarification of our key terms. Throughout this discourse, the following 6 words will be at the core of our consideration: education, value, effective healthcare, ethics, and professionalism. What is education? The word education, from the Latin verb educare, literally means to bring up a human being, and A human being is a rational animal. Note, I am saying a rational animal. And if you translate into any of our languages, it's a leash. If you see a dog that reasons, you run away. If you see a cat that is laughing, you get worried. If you find a lion that is dancing, you will not stand to watch. A human being is a bi-unity, complex bi-unity of the physical and the metaphysical, and I'm insisting on the mundane and the spiritual. Therefore, from its root, education has to do with bringing up the whole person, his faculties and capacities. What we have so far are people who are educated in the brain, but they are overgrown babies. So we have got highly learned thieves and very educated adults. We must begin to understand, according to the German archaeologist and historian Jan Assmann, education began in prehistory when adults started teaching the young people knowledge and skills which they deemed necessary for the community, and storytelling passed on knowledge and values. But as time went on, they discovered that there was need for something more organized, and that is how formal education came in. Formal education occurs in a structured environment whose explicit purpose is the teaching of students, while informal education has to do with impacting knowledge and skills by other means rather than in a classroom or somewhere where it is more organized. This paper is concerned with formal education. Formal education these days can be pre-nursery, nursery, primary, secondary, or tertiary. Our concern in this discourse is with tertiary education of medical and healthcare personnel. Although different peoples and places at different times have used educational systems for different purposes, three essential objectives should be at the basis of any education. 1. Impacting knowledge. 2. Impacting values and skills. 3. Building capacities and preparing for the social needs and relevance of that education. Historians tell us, and many of you may not know, I inform you, that education in the West is the brainchild, formal education in the West is the brainchild of the church, arising from the cathedral schools of the early Middle Ages. When people want to tell the church how school should be run, it is like telling your master how a student should do his work. In fact, a good number of the most renowned universities in the world, if you are not yet convinced, owe their origin to the church. Note, the University of Bologna, from where we have got all our university standards now throughout the world, the University of Oxford, Cambridge, London, Paris, La Sapienza, Harvard, and Johns Hopkins, even St. Petersburg, the State University in Moscow. All of them came from the church. Go and check out. And this is no accident, because the church took up formal education in order to uplift morality, which had fallen into almost complete decadence. If you read Geoffrey Chaucer, what he tells about the church in the Middle Ages, it is lamentable. It was at that time that the church, as mother and teacher, embarked on forming correct consciences. So, we have said education has to do with the formation of the entire person, and because it came from the church, it focuses on values. What are values? Is our second term. A value is something which is good and has worth, which is desirable, important, and useful. When I said this, somebody said stealing is also a value in some cultures. No. Some cultures will permit stealing to show that you are very bold. In the north, there are areas where if you don't steal, you are not considered a man. So you must steal to show that you are daring. But that is not a value, it is a cultural practice. There are different ways of looking at and categorizing values, but two basic categories are necessary: moral and human values. Moral values concern themselves with what is right and what is wrong, what is good and what is bad, what is acceptable and what is evil, irrespective of person, place, situation. For example, this is a moral value. Do not kill. Doesn't matter who you are. Doesn't matter where you are. Do not kill. Do not steal. Doesn't matter who you are and where you are. These moral values come from the natural and divine law and are written in the heart of even the most hardened criminal. Human values is the second set of values. On the contrary, these are values that are acquired when dealing with other human beings. For example, love. I cannot force you to love or hate. Truth. I cannot force you to tell the truth or tell a lie. And non-violence. You can choose to be violent or peaceful. These values are gained in the process of our proper formation of the human conscience. In 1994, a group of university students in the University of Michigan, the United States, started what has become an award-winning non-profit organization that empowers youth to succeed through monitoring, strategic planning, and workforce. That platform is today called Winning Futures, and you can check it out on the internet. They emphasize three important values: character, work, and personal values. By character values, they emphasize the universal values that one needs in order to exist as a good human being. All of us want to be good. We all know what it means to be good. There is nobody here who wants to be bad. Most employers consider good character as capital when they are hiring. I am sure that the proprietors of this institution would have found other teachers who were better than you. But one of the considerations they gave is, what is your character trait? If some of you were notorious thieves but very excellent scientists, you would not have been hired. Then the second thing which they talk about is about the work values. These are those values which help one to find job description, job satisfaction. These days, it's very difficult to find people who are satisfied doing their job. And that is a very important thing that's lacking in our education. Examples of work values are joy in doing work, commitment, prestige, and stability. Finally, that group of the Winning Futures has personal values. And these Winning Futures focus on the elements because they think that every person wants to have happiness. And these values are the guiding principles in life. For example, success, good health, usefulness to society, and being of help to others. This paper would like to inculcate these three values from the Winning Futures: character, work, and personal, in all the teachers and students who are preparing for an effective healthcare delivery to Cameroonians. What is effective healthcare? Effective healthcare is the delivery of care that meets the essential standards of quality and safety and aspires to be of high degree. For this to happen, the following three operations must be available on a daily basis. First, quality healthcare is promptly brought to all the patients, irrespective of their age, sex, or background. By quality healthcare, we mean here care which is safe, timely, equitable, and person-centered. Second, effective healthcare also implies that the best available outcomes, benefits, and harms of drugs, devices, and healthcare services are correctly observed and reported so that informed healthcare decisions be taken. Sometimes some people, because they have an envelope in hand, will not report what they know is definitely injurious to their patients. Thirdly, effective healthcare is delivered by all in full respect of the basic principles of medical ethics and professionalism. What is medical ethics and professionalism? The word ethics derives from the Greek ethos, which translates as custom, habit, or character. Simply defined then, health ethics is concerned with what is good for individuals and the society, the content of moral judgment, and the criteria for what is good and bad. As a discipline of its own, ethics is a normative science which tells us what is good and what is bad, how we are to live good and upright lives. Does anyone know about good and upright lives? The end justifies the means. Brief. Ethics provides the moral guide for human conduct in each particular situation. In healthcare, ethics directs and inspires a professional relationship between the provider and the patient. Professionalism here refers to the deontology, the skill or competence expected in a particular field. Healthcare needs men and women who have both the knowledge and the skill. People who are honest, who can keep confidentiality, and who will consciously take responsibility for their actions. Our hypothesis in this paper is that one cannot be a professional in healthcare and not respect ethical principles at the same time. One cannot be a professional in healthcare and not respect its ethical principles at the same time. That is why the key concepts that are at the basis of our discourse are mutually linked. Our conviction is that to ascertain proper good health care for all Cameroonians, we need men and women who are so well educated in the health sciences that they can combine both skill and value when rendering service to vulnerable human beings. But aware that we live in a society where good and effective health care is still a luxury. There is every reason, therefore, to emphasize the yawning need for education in values, particularly during the training of healthcare providers. That takes us out of our key words to our major preoccupation, education in values for healthcare providers. The concept of education in values may be a 20th century coinage, but the reality dates back to the very origins of formal education. In 1998, UNESCO organized the first World Education Conference in Paris with the aim of trying to reinstall values in modern education. Next year, from the 5th to the 7th of March 2022, the 17th Education and Development Conference will take place in Bangkok, Thailand. Educational experts are gradually discovering that our scientific and technological evolution, in spite of all of this, there is a major temptation to stress skill, efficiency, and professionalism to the detriment of basic human and moral values, which are at the heart of human formation and transformation. So, education experts and stakeholders will be brought together to Bangkok, Thailand, primarily to discuss education in values necessary for the true education and formation of the world. In the field of medicine and health sciences, the need for values is capital because medicine and healthcare have as their subject and object the good of the human being. It was this consideration which inspired the early Greek physician Hippocrates, of course, to craft an oath as early as the 3rd century BC to be taken by all physicians. Hippocrates took healthcare so seriously that he wanted to ensure that anyone who is coming into this field is conscious of the enormity of the task assigned to him. A similar pledge was articulated in the late 19th century AD by the British nurse Florence Nightingale. Despite the vast extent of time between the two, both the Hippocratic Oath for doctors and the Nightingale Pledge for nurses stress on the indisputable moral and human values. Although there have been attempts, and there are many these days, to give other renderings to these two basic documents, their classic versions remain the guide in most of biomedical ethics and research. In fact, as recent as last year, on the 30th of September 2020, the Lancet and Annals of Internal Medicine journals published a new charter on medical professionals. Yet, even this charter acknowledged the vision of Hippocrates and Florence Nightingale and called for medical experts and the respect for the dignity of the human person involved in health care. We cannot therefore deal intimately with the human being and avoid being ethical and morally conscious. Therefore, no matter what we say about globalization and its invading secularism, there is no way we can discuss the training of healthcare providers without a heavy emphasis on education in values. Among the values that must be considered, ladies and gentlemen, are reverence for God, love for the dignity and sanctity of human life, respect for well-formed conscience, and confidentiality in dealing with patients. Let me briefly explain each of these because I consider them capital. Reverence for God. Today, one of the most disturbing issues with devastating consequences is the levity with which many people talk and think about God and religion. In fact, for a good number of people, even among you here, talk about God is at the very best just unnecessary nuisance. And yet, this attitude brings us to where we are today with all the chaos and disaster in our world. My dear brothers and sisters, ladies and gentlemen, the history of human civilization, and you can go and cross-check it, right from the lower Mesopotamia to our days, clearly indicates that each generation that began to waver in its trust and consideration of the sublime and the divine, and taking religious issues and others very lightly, that generation began to plummet. You can check up their history. In 1929, the French philosopher and mathematician Edouard Leroi published a book which captured the right atmosphere of his time. His book was provocatively entitled Le Problème de Dieu, the problem of God. People were making God into a problem, just like today. It may please you at this juncture to know that historically it was during the French Renaissance of the 16th century that the word atheism was coined and used to ask upward questions about the existence of God. Up until then, it was taken for granted that God was a necessary being and could not exist. In fact, in 1078, the English Benedictine monk, later on St. Anselm of Canterbury, wrote a philosophical treatise entitled The Proslogius, in which he argued that, what? God is that than which none greater can exist. God is that than which none greater can exist. Understood as such, it is impossible, almost foolish, for anyone to imagine the non-existence of God. God is that than which none greater can exist. But the 18th century Enlightenment brought along a plethora of free-time thinkers like Denis Diderot, Jean-Jacques Rousseau, François-Marie Arouet, more popularly known as Voltaire, David Hume, and Adam Smith. These fellows challenged Christian belief in God and religion. And herein lies the root of the nauseating anti-religious sentiment in our days today. These free thinkers gave topsy to the 19th and 20th century thinkers who took up their refrain, and today they have almost impacted so many in our society that we find Africans who claim to be atheists. Yet, it seems intellectually dishonest to pay glowing tribute to the human intellect and at the same time to reject the source of that intellect. The 18th century German philosopher Immanuel Kant tells us that the reality so confronts us that the human intellect sometimes is stretched to its elastic limit and must submit to what Immanuel Kant calls the categorical imperative. That is the word where you are bound to obey, do this and do not do that. And it is not left to you. And this word of the categorical imperative is the word where human experience of the divine and religion are born. Except you do not have an intellect, there is no way where you can claim to be an intellectual who at the same time has no faith. It is this word which John Paul II spoke about in 1998 in his encyclical Fides et Ratio, Faith and Reason, of the 14th of September 1998. It is not possible to have a genuine intellectual who has no faith. Both are two sides of the same coin. Let me explain. The human intellect reaches its limit, and when it reaches its limit, it capitulates because it realizes that there is something beyond the human intellect, and that is when it gets into the world of the categorical imperative, through whether you like it or not. And that world of the categorical imperative is called faith. So faith lifts the human intellect to where it should be so that we can understand reality. Most of you living here, sitting here, survive on faith. You tell me this is your mother, this is your father. If I ask you to prove, you have no other proof except that history has told you. Even with your own DNA and whatever scientific experiments you make, you will never prove that this is your father or mother except by faith or by belief. And that is why St. Anselm of Canterbury said, I believe so that I may understand. Credo ut intelligam. That is why the first missionaries to Cameroon, when they founded St. Joseph's College, Sussex, in 1939, they gave as motto, faith seeking understanding. Fides querens intellectum. If you have an intellect that does not seek understanding, or a faith that does not want any intellect, there is something wrong. Science without faith becomes scientism, and faith without science becomes fanaticism. The human being that we are, and who is the target of all medical attention and healthcare, is a person with an intellect which knows that the human intellect only participates in the super intellect or God. It is in fact ironical, therefore, to find a human being who believes in himself but not in his origin. It is equally self-contradictory for a true African, and Africans are defined by their deep sense of religiosity. In fact, the Nigerian anthropologist defines the African as notoriously and incurably religious. Some of our compatriots, and it's sad to say, tell us with glee that Cameroon is constitutionally a secular state. Therefore, religion should not be brought to the public square. Bad logic. Secular does not, has never, and cannot mean atheistic. On the contrary, when a state declares itself secular, it means that every religion is welcome on stage, provided it is not a source of public or social disorder. America, for example, is probably one of the most secular states on earth, yet take the dollar, on it is written, in God we trust. We cannot afford to push God to the periphery of our lives, certainly not in the area of medicine and effective health care, which is our present concern. The human being is a rational animal, an intelligent animal which quickly realizes that he is both physical and spiritual. He can consult one of the oldest documents in human history, the Bible, which tells us unequivocally that the human being was created in the image and likeness of God, Genesis chapter 1, verse 26. That's the oldest document we have in human history. It tells us that. That is why the human being, because he is rational, is in fact one who can withstand the Marxist materialist communism that began in the 20th century and which has been unable to destroy religion. After observing what is happening in our so-called developed West, the Duke of Wellington in Australia told the leaders of the West, quote, educate people without religion, and you turn them into clever devils. I am afraid we are getting far too late. Indeed, a human life without God is meaningless. It can only lead into nihilism. In his philosophical reflection, Alstar sprach Zarathustra, thus spoke Zarathustra, originally published in 1883, the German atheistic philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche celebrated the death of God and called on each human being to aim instead at becoming an Übermensch, or the Superman. But my dear brothers and sisters, the experience of time has shown to us that such a creature of Friedrich Nietzsche is both illusory and unattainable. In fact, once we take away the sublime nature of the human person, what is left in the human person is an animal instinct which is amoral and only capable of obeying jungle law. And if we give free range to jungle law, the greatest atrocities can be committed, just like we are having them now. So, let us not be carried away by fertile imaginations of people who can easily derail us. Modern man prides himself with having reached the heights of scientific and technological development, which is true. But if we seek to retrieve the Marxist belief of yesteryears that religion is the opium of the people, then we are not quick to remember that the USSR spoke a similar language and disintegrated sooner than they thought. The horrendous crimes against humanity today should ring an alarm bell everywhere. And the book of Proverbs, chapter 9, was like, what? The fear of God is the beginning of all wisdom. The classical version of the Hippocratic Oath and the Nightingale Pledge makes several allusions to this reference from the Bible. And this discourse shares in that belief, fear of God. In a typical African society, my dear brothers and sisters, the entire drama of life unfolds before the divine, and that is the reason why a genuine African does not know how to exist without God. So we do not know where these new Africans are coming from who pretend that there is no God. Especially an African who has to do with medicine. Go to the village and check any medicine man, and they will tell you they believe in the gods, in their spirits, and in their ancestors. These kind of modern medicine men and women who do not want to believe in their ancestors can start crying the death of their own profession. We are Africans, for crying out loud. And we do not believe only in God, we believe in our ancestors. We respect the dignity and sanctity of the human person. And that is the second thing I think should be put into all the students and drummed into all teachers. Respect for the dignity and sanctity of the human person. I drove from Ekondo Titi up to Akko last 4 months, and I wept almost at every stop. Especially after Batibo, when I found a human corpse being devoured by a pig. I wept for all of us. The human being is at the summit and center of all created reality on earth, because he alone, of all animals, is a person capable of relating in a rational manner with the Supreme and with others. Created in the image and likeness of God, every human being shares an equality in dignity as persons. Therefore, there is no human being who is more human than others. Don't fool yourself. In fact, every human being has equal right to life, health, and justice. Each person has inalienable rights which must be universally respected. Unfortunately, we live in a world today where human life is treated with such shocking levity that the legendary horror that once associated with the spilling of human blood is gone. Today, for example, for our noise about human rights, human life can be wasted for the least inconvenience. So, our streets are now often littered with corpses, some even abandoned to be carted away by pigs and dogs. Within this background, The medical expert and healthcare provider must be trained to react in a dramatically different way. Article 25 of the United Nations 1948 Universal Declaration of Human Rights states, quote, everyone has the right to a standard of living adequate for the health and well-being of himself and of his family, including food, clothing, housing, and medical care and necessary social services, unquote. On the 70th anniversary of the World Health Organization, celebrated on the 10th of December 2017, the Egyptian Director General, Dr. Tedros Ghebreyesus, was emphatic, quote, good health is a basic human right. The right to health also means that everyone should be entitled to control their own health and body, including having access to information and services free from violence and discrimination. Everyone has the right to privacy, to be treated with respect and dignity. Nobody should be subjected to medical experimentation, false medical examination, or given treatment without informed consent. No one should get sick and die just because they are poor or because they cannot access the health services they need, unquote. Healthcare providers in Cameroon definitely need to know this and know it very seriously. They also need to understand that when they are dealing with a human being, they are confronted with their own kind. People who, although they are sick, vulnerable, and sometimes clumsy, still maintain their human dignity and sanctity. Every patient deserves to be treated as a human person who shares in the divinity of God and therefore worthy of respect and kind attention. It is shocking when you find nurses, even those trained in prestigious institutions, who treat human life as if it were at their beck and call or dependent on the amount of envelope that they receive. That is why there is a further need for a well-formed conscience. And that is our third value that must be dropped in. The formation of good consciences. The conscience is the human intellect when properly applied in a moral sphere. Since every human being has an intellect, everyone has a conscience. However, since people have different upbringings, people react with different types of consciences. That is why there's an urgent need for the proper formation of consciences, because in the field of healthcare, we may be called up to take certain challenging decisions where the conscience is very necessary. Take for an example, I am a Christian nurse and a doctor calls me for an induced abortion. Should I follow the doctor or not? As a medical officer, I find someone whose life has become just a vegetable. Am I allowed, in the name of euthanasia, to let him die? If that were my father or mother, would I do the same? As a laboratory nurse, I discovered that the patient who came in has HIV/AIDS, and this happens to be the fiancé of my brother. Am I allowed to tell him that he should not marry her? These are moments when the right conscience is necessary. There are four main types of consciences in pairs: a correct and an erroneous conscience, a certain and a doubting conscience, a strict or lax conscience, a perplexed or scrupulous conscience. A correct conscience judges what is right as right, while the erroneous conscience does the opposite. I was shocked that someone told me after I said something, a very important personality in this country told me, "Father, you shouldn't have said that." I asked him, was it wrong? Not every truth should be spoken. I bowed. We must always act with a correct conscience. A certain conscience judges without hesitation. It is sure. But a doubting conscience hesitates because there are issues it is not sure of. We should always act with a certain conscience, and when you are in doubt, delay action and judgment or decision. But if you must act, choose the lesser evil. As long as the lesser evil is not also sin. A strict conscience judges according to the letter of the law, and takes no chances for an excuse, while a lax conscience looks for any reason for an excuse. We should always act with a strict conscience. A perplexed conscience is torn between alternatives, none of which it finds easy to take. Treat this exactly as a doubting conscience. A scrupulous conscience sees evil even where there is no evil. This paper proposes that the proper formation of good consciences, Dr. and Mrs. Awatu, become part and parcel of the ongoing training of medical and healthcare providers in this holy infant higher institution of health sciences. The object of the intellect is the acquisition of the truth, and the truth is that which cannot not be. A well-formed conscience will seek the truth, defend it, and promote it in and out of season, accepted or rejected. A well-formed conscience does what is good in the sight of God and what squares with natural law and right wisdom. If we must have effective health care in our society, we need doctors and nurses who are instinctive in respecting the right conscience, people who are trustworthy, nurses and doctors who respect confidentiality in dealing with their patients and with others. Far too many things are held outside the hospital which should not be heard. Confidentiality and dealing with patients. A key moment in healthcare is the relationship between the provider and the patient, and this is the relationship which is determined by the level of trust and confidentiality that exists between the two. Once the patient does not trust the healthcare provider, little or nothing can be achieved. If you were that girl who was raped in the night by the best medical doctor, and you come in the morning to meet him to treat you, would you go to him? Hence, healthcare providers, especially those involved in counseling, must establish boundaries that make the client-counselor relationship very clear. In their distress and pain, many patients can easily become emotional and vulnerable. But all relationships in healthcare should be limited to a therapeutic setting, and professional boundaries should be maintained. Healthcare counselors need to safeguard the individual rights and privacy of others. I'm getting towards the finish, don't get bored. Confidentiality is the cornerstone of the counseling relationship of counselors and who are responsible for maintaining partnership. Clients should be made aware if information about them has to be shared to others outside the counseling relationship. And even if then, only the essential information should be released. If sessions are to be recorded, patients and clients should consent. All in all, medical experts and healthcare providers must be trained in such a way that they take professional responsibility for all their acts. And this leads us to our final consideration, ethical and professional implications of healthcare. There has been a lot of development in medical research and healthcare and biomedical technology. And some of these advances have created great challenges that today there is a deep-rooted argument between medical researchers and moralists. What should take precedence? The professional expertise of the researcher or the ethical consideration of the research? Professionalism in ethical principles. The argument is rugged in at least 4 areas: organ and tissue transplant, genetic engineering, stem cell technology, and pathology. Since the first kidney transplant in Boston in 1954, transplants of other organs and tissues have become part of the success story in medical research. However, a bioethical problem has arisen of recent, as a good number of people, and I have my friend who died at 100 who did just that, where people are offering their body for science, and therefore the body is not supposed to be buried. It is kept for scientific experiments. Should we allow this? While the professional medical researchers may have no problem with using parts of this dead body, ethical principles are raised against them. A similar difficulty arises in the area of genetic engineering. While a good number of women who could not conceive are today rushing to the general hospital not far away from us to have babies through new reproductive technologies, moralists openly disagree with some of the methods used. What should be privileged? The child who brings a smile, or the method which is ethically not acceptable? In 1974, when the German scientist Rudolf Janssen used genetic engineering to improve on the yield of crops and animals, there was a great applause. Today, when medical researchers try to use the similar genetic technology to change the genetic information in human beings, there is an uproar in the field of bioethics. So, what should be done? Stem cell technology is probably the latest hope that through it, a number of malignant and non-malignant diseases could finally find a cure. A very serious ethical arguments have already been raised, especially with regards to embryonic stem cells, some of which must be destroyed after the essentials have been used. Can ethics just close its eyes and watch? The last essential area of contention today is the field of pathology, where researchers are struggling to identify the nature, the causes, the effects and cures of new diseases, incurable and terminal illnesses. Don't forget you are working in Africa. And some of you will have patients in your hospital with all the medicine you are bringing. The Mungan man is coming in at night. If you do not understand that this Mungan man is a stakeholder, your patient will not survive the way he should survive. And that is why we must be aware of bringing a dialogue between our traditional healers and the Western trained medical doctors and health care officials that we will be. Much as bioethics will applaud every good medical breakthrough in these areas mentioned, she remains wayward about the Machiavellian approach that is in some medical professionals who think that the end justifies the means. This paper suggests that in order to close the gap, professionals need to have both the skill and instinct for acceptable and basic ethical principles, which are these: knowledge of and application of the basic principles of biomedical ethics. In 1979, two American moral philosophers, Tom Bockham and James Childress, published a groundbreaking work entitled Principles of Biomedical Ethics, in which they spelled out what is today known as the four basic principles of biomedical ethics, namely respect for autonomy, principle of beneficence, the principle of non-maleficence, and the principle of justice. What to be? Respect for autonomy simply means, and it is incorporated in two ethical convictions, that the individual should be treated as autonomous agents, and second, that persons with diminished autonomy are entitled to protection, because all human beings are born free and equal in dignity and right. However, a person can only take responsible choices if that person has been fully informed of and if he understands the facts of his situation. Take an example, ladies and gentlemen, of a Jehovah's Witness who by his faith does not believe in blood transfusion, but comes to the hospital and needs that blood or will die. So what should we do as a medical doctor? One interrogation. Principle of beneficence, derived from natural law and built on the first commandment of morality: do good and avoid evil. This principle seems very obvious because healthcare providers have a duty to do only good that will benefit their patients. But ladies and gentlemen, the difficulty lies here in what is good. The good for some patients may be allowing them to die. Are you allowed to allow them to die? Third principle, the principle of non-maleficence. It is a negative way of stating the beneficent principle. The doctor must avoid or end any treatment that is known to act against the best interest of the patient. However, sometimes it is unclear if harm is intentional or an unfortunate byproduct of an act meant to provide benefit. For example, you are a doctor, and an elderly person with a terminal cancer comes in and suddenly has a heart attack. And you are supposed to put this person under a breathing tube, knowing fully well that his pain will increase and he will certainly die. What do you do? The fourth principle of justice. Since all human beings share an equality in dignity, as persons, each person has a right to fair treatment. This looks very upright, but in concrete situations, a number of different factors influence actual access to treatment. The president's wife is sick. An old woman from Okumunjang is sick. Whom do you attend to first? Question mark. Social status. A man who is ready to give you 5 million stands before you to attend to him. An old woman who will not even pay his hospital bill stands before you. Whom should you attend to? Difficult question. Hospital budget. Your budget is exhausted. And here stands before you someone who will give you money that will cover up for the month. And another one who has nothing. All of them are sick. Who is to be tackled? Difficulty number one. Furthermore, healthcare has its own rationing or priority setting decisions. Priority should be given to those who have the greatest need and who are facing immediate threat. Your brother and some other person who faces the greater threat. Justice demands that healthcare be distributed in such a way that the maximum benefit for the greatest number of patients be exhibited. Finally, healthcare resources should be allotted for everyone, although there are always people who will readily use what is available. And then finally, my suggestions. It is evident that good healthcare in Cameroon is still an option for a privileged few who have the means. There are a number of reasons for this state of affairs. But one major reason has to do with the quality of formation of our healthcare providers. For a start, many who find themselves in this profession, and I'm talking to them looking at me, did not do so by choice. It was by necessity. A good number have come into the profession because they want a job and a means to earn a living. A bad case is made worse when these very people who do not have the talent for healthcare are again trained in conditions that are non-professional and far from being excellent. Therefore, if we desire an effective healthcare delivery, our higher institutions of health sciences must, Dr. Awasuma and the others, start with the recruitment of the candidates who come into this. The difference between a candidate who sees healthcare as a vocation and an adventurer into the field, who sees healthcare as a means to get money, can easily be discerned. Unfortunately, like many other institutions in Cameroon, the objective for opening educational institutions swing from whether one wants sheer sordid money or the desire to dispense useful knowledge. Dr. and Mrs. Awasum have told us it is because they are under the infant Jesus. Is it everyone who is under the infant Jesus? Even those who teach here, are they here because they want money or because they really love teaching others to become better healthcare providers? Question for meditation. This notwithstanding, the quality and curriculum for the formation of healthcare providers should not be left to the whims and caprices of the proprietor. There are universal standards that must be followed. My second suggestion. In the area of human health care, nothing short of excellence should be admitted. This means that the project be well conceived and executed, and the team of trainers be carefully selected, and the curriculum be followed meticulously. In the field of healthcare, ladies and gentlemen, merit and excellence should be the only key words. Merit and excellence. Not even the best students should pass for any other reason. I want to finish with an anecdote. I taught a student in my days in secondary school, with all due respect. That student was as dull as a pea. A few months ago, she turned up with her friends telling me she has now been appointed vice principal of a school. I yelled. I said, how did you get that far? The friend said, Father, she went to higher ELS. I said, oh, you have the brains to reach that far? And they told me she had, one of the people who organized this is her friend, and she has got goddess. So what is goddess? So I turned and I looked at her and I said, did you pass for having a good head or a good leg? And she immediately answered, if God has given me what can find my way with in life, why can't I use it? I went. In this institution, anyone should only qualify because of excellence and merit. That is why we strongly suggest and recommend that a well-articulated course on bioethics becomes compulsory at all levels for those training as healthcare providers. Aware that experts in this field are lacking, I am without any publicity, and this book came out only last week, and Dr. Watson didn't know, but I'm very happy that one of my editors is by my left. She's seen it here for the first time. The book is called Basic Principles of Bioethics for Medical Students in Africa. I have gone in to look at even our culture to find how we look at medical and healthcare. And I have used all the principles that are accepted worldwide, and I am strongly, recommending that each student and each member of staff, not because I want your money, gets a copy of this and will make a difference. I've brought 100 copies that I will leave with the school here for you to make sure that all the students and anyone else can get it. They will cost you a meager 3,000. For what is inside, you'll be ashamed not to have a copy. Conclusion. We set out to make a critical examination of respect for professional and ethical values in healthcare training in Cameroon. We have been able to indicate that far from moving forward and towards an efficient, good healthcare for our society, the field is still laden with far too many oddities and will need immediate and urgent attention. That is why we propose that this discourse on education and values be made available at least for all healthcare providers. We have also highlighted the crying need for professionals in the field to respect the basic principles of bioethics, and I doff my cap to you all. Thank you.
Thank you. I told you. Are you surprised? No. I alerted you not so. Okay. I think we can sit down.